Hello, everybody. I am Yun Cannon, and I'm here today with Eric Jordan. We're going to be talking about things you can do to help you sell your business. So you are in the right place if you are thinking about retiring and need to figure out an exit plan, or maybe you just want to move on to some other things and you want to sell your business. This is also actually for you if you don't really think about selling your business, you just want to scale it. So the same mechanics are going to help you scale it as it's going to help you sell it. So giving yourself some options is a great thing, but the road to selling your business can be a little tricky. So I want to help you shortcut that process. I'm here today talking to Eric Jordan, my friend from Canada. And Eric has been in the business a long time, helping folks with business valuations. He's based in Canada. As I mentioned, his website is pin.ca. So Eric, I'm excited to have this conversation today.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. Now, Yen is a seasoned entrepreneur. You've been at this since 1992. You started and you turnkeyed and sold three other businesses. And your advice has been featured in Entrepreneur Magazine, Fortune Magazine, CNN, Wall Street Journal. And you started Paramount Business Coach.com 17 years ago. And you've been helping small, medium business owners scale businesses and scale their growth through one-on-one mentoring and peer mastermind groups. That's pretty impressive. My goodness.
Well, thank
Congratulations.
you. Thank you. Thank you. There's as every entrepreneur knows, certainly the road is not without its challenges. A lot of learning curves, a lot of learning by trial and error. and of course, that's what brought me 17 years ago to want to help other entrepreneurs to come alongside them. So it's not as lonely, and to help people avoid costly mistakes, because I certainly have made my fair share of costly mistakes. But I know today we're going to talk about helping those people out there who are thinking about retiring, or like I said earlier, just maybe I wasn't thinking about retiring when I sold my businesses.
So what do you do? What do you say to business owners to help them get ready to sell their business? What can you do for them?
Oh, great question. So, the big part of selling your business is making sure it's a business that other people want to buy, and they want to walk in. The whole reason they're buying it instead of starting from scratch themselves is because they want a system, a turnkey system. They don't want to spend all the beginning years in startup mode and fundraise and start with one or two employees and then scale. So it's really about helping them identify where their business strengths are and where it could benefit from being systematized. So that could be, that's really should be in all facets of the business, systematizing marketing. Do you have a consistent flow of a process where it's a predictable flow of leads and customers? What's your customer retention? What's your customer lifetime value? So that's an asset. Then, of course, you've got your team. So do you have an organization that can really run the business by themselves? And they can do it without you. And it's just great if they have a leader. They should have a leader. But it's not the owner who is doing all the heavy lifting of keeping the business growing and operating day to day. So that's going to be an important facet. And then, of course, you've got customer service, you've got admin, you've got operations and all that. So it's really holistic. And that's where I come in and help and just be that outside party who can look in and give an unbiased observation, feedback, insights to say, hey, you know what, I think this could use more systematization. And of course, oftentimes the business owner knows where the weak spots are. So we just work together on strengthening that to help them either at least have options. They can sell the business, or they can just let the business run by itself and enjoy being the founder, but taking a back seat. Maybe they want to spend 3 months and have a sabbatical somewhere. Maybe they only want to check in, once a week. So it gives them
Yeah,
options.
I just had a client from Toronto that they did a business valuation, and she got an offer, and the offer was ridiculous. And they're questioning the methodology that we use and where these numbers are coming from. And she said, "You know what? We know what we've got. I don't really care if I retire or not. It doesn't matter." And Canada's going through a process right now where it kind of looks like politically we might be getting back on track. And so people are going to say, like this lady is, I'm going to stay in business.
Mhm.
And yeah, it really is. And I find what people need to know is they need to know they're on a path, they're on a road somewhere. But when we do a business valuation, we are able to show them where they are on the road. And then when they realize where they are on the road, they can decide from that business valuation, oh my goodness, I'm not systemized.
Mhm.
Then they need to be talking to somebody like you, because they can't do it themselves. They haven't done that for 25 years that they've been in business. What makes you think they're going to start doing it on their own now? They're not. So they need to talk to somebody like you to get processes and procedures and systems in place. Now, if they have them in place and they've taken themselves out of the equation, like you talk about, they're good to go for a lot of ways. And that's the whole process that you and I, when we work with our clients, we see where. But first of all, we got to see where they're at and what kind of dollars that's worth.
Right. So I'm
Yeah.
curious, when someone's thinking about, hey, maybe, 3 years down the line, maybe it's next year, maybe it's 5 years, but they're curious, what's the value of their business? So what's your methodology, Eric, on helping them identify what is the value of their business?
Well, Canada is probably the leading governance on business valuation. They've actually, through the Canada Income Tax Act and the policy paper, they've developed a whole bunch of points that you must do.
Mhm.
And what you must do is you must give fair market value, and you must look at and consider, you must identify, you must measure, you must weigh, and you must value all of the assets, the tangible assets and the intangible assets. And now, which is much different from 1975, when a lot of these things, the way business valuations have been done and mostly still are done,
Mhm.
all they talk about is the accounting, and they don't have a methodology for measuring intangible assets.
How do you
So
measure
what
intangible assets?
well, what you do is you got things like you got workforce.
Mhm.
Okay. So are they contractors? Are they employees? And what would it cost to replace them? And how long would it take to put all that together? You've got things like client base, and how long would it take you to establish a client base like that?
Mhm.
And then you've got things like uh, that are cumulative, like you've got your brand. Okay, well, you do things with your brand as you do with your brand, you're adding to it all the time, and it's cumulative. And so you've got to look at all of these things. You got to figure out which are the cumulative things that you do, and the advertising that you do, the processes, the procedures, the systems, and all of that thing. all of that's cumulative. It's not you don't just write it off the year that you wrote it off in your books. That doesn't mean it's not worth anything. And so you add all these things up. And there's 25 factors that I go through. You can find them on my website, pin.ca. And then you think about that. Oh, yeah. And most of that is not accounting. And I think the other mistake that a lot of people make is they have been buffaloed into thinking that there is data out there to tell them what small businesses sell for.
Mhm.
And okay, well, that's fine. But did anybody talk to the seller? Oh, they missed that. Okay, so they don't know whether this was a real price or whether they were just passing it along to the family, or whether the wife had cancer and they had, some devious person, pushing them, taking advantage of that. Was it a forced sale? Because the definition of fair market value in Canada is an unpressed buyer and an unpressed, like people that don't need to do the deal, but they do the deal because it's fair to both of them, without any duress. And that's what fair market value is. Now, if you have a deal that's outside of that, well, it's not fair market value. It's something else. And I'm not saying there aren't deals that are done at the something else, but fair market value is what we do for business valuations. So when someone gets a business valuation from me, then they know, like this gal in Toronto, she knows what her business is worth. It's worth XXX. And so when somebody comes along and offers her something less than that, she says, well, I don't think so. I'm not really that stupid. And, for these reasons, which she understands, and my valuations are understandable, she understands where her value is. And
By the
it's
way,
just
Eric, I'm
like,
curious because we didn't address also because you're in Canada, I'm in the US. Do you mainly do valuations for businesses in Canada, or what other countries do
I
you?
have I have done business valuations in the U.S. and in Australia. Haven't done any in the UK. I think they've got their own way of doing things, and sometimes they're smarter than us, anyways. And so we'll let it go with that. And so it's mostly Canada, U.S., and Australia. That's where most of our, and because the systems are almost identical, although I really think that Canada, with their, by providing the governance with this policy paper and their income tax act, I think they're way ahead of the rest of them on here's the rules for this. And in Canada, this is the rules. And if you don't follow the rules, you're non-compliant. And I don't think you'd be non-compliant in the U.S. if you didn't follow, and if you didn't identify and you didn't measure and you didn't weigh and you didn't value all these different assets. But you'd certainly be able to look somebody, or you'd be able to make somebody that didn't do that, you'd be able to make them look pretty foolish on the other side of it. And then with their comparables, okay, who talked to the seller? What were the real terms? Okay, did you see the terms? Do you know what the terms are? Oh, you don't. Okay, so you don't know what interest rate was charged. The workforce, who identified the workforces were, are they in their 40s or are they in their late 60s? There's a big difference there. Have they been
So, Eric, when you give a business owner their valuation, is it similar? Is it a similar process, I guess, as you would receive if you were trying to sell your home? So you give them comps, and then do you give them like an
No,
itemized?
I don't give them comps. There are no comps for small businesses. That is the
That's what you're
fallacy.
saying. Yeah.
That's the fallacy. There are no comps because there's no business exactly like yours. Who has a business exactly like yours?
So then are you giving them an itemized value sheet? So for instance,
Yes, we go through.
yeah.
What I do is they send me their financial documents. And then I get my head around those. And that kind of gives me a background to go in. And then we go through those 25 factors affecting business valuation. Some of them won't be relevant. We don't, they're just, not relevant. And the others, we'll either give them a weight. I give them a weight of -5 to +10 most of the time. And, or we can give them a dollar value. Okay. Like sometimes we're going to give things a dollar value. And so each one of them might, in some instances, be given a dollar value. Other ones we would give a weight to, and then we would combine those weights at the end to calculate, a fair, a cap rate.
Okay.
Because
So once you give the valuation, I'm curious, what do you do with your clients then? Is it, do you also help them sell it, or is the valuation your main business?
valuation is our core business. We're getting into more when we started 25 years ago, 24 years ago, we were strictly a website listing businesses for sale. And we didn't have the good fortune to have somebody like you to help people prepare. And so people had no idea about systemizing their businesses, which is what you do. So, well, tell me, what are some of the biggest problems that you have when somebody comes to you, as somebody should have 20 years ago, and what should they have asked you, and what should you have solved for them? And maybe you want to talk about that for a little bit.
Yeah. So I think, if I'm understanding your question correctly, if a business owner is thinking about selling their business and they come to me, what are the questions they should ask?
Yeah.
Is that what you're asking?
Yes, that's what I'm asking.
Okay. So I would say, I think what they should ask would be questions like, what do you think? How do you see our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats? Starting out with the basic SWOT analysis in the context of how attractive would it be for someone else to step into this business. And they really need to be coachable. They really need to also be able to receive constructive criticism. And I don't like to say the word criticism because I don't consider it. It's more like feedback. It's more feedback to saying, okay, well, here's a hard feedback I had to give somebody, right? So I worked with this company. They were doing 18 million, and so the owner wanted to eventually, he wanted to be able to take sabbaticals, go on lots of golf trips overseas, and just wanted to work less and hopefully sell a business. And there was a lot of strengths in the business, but the one feedback that was going to be very difficult for him to receive, and it's a kind of a conundrum. What do? He recently appointed his brother to be in a high executive leadership role. And the brother never really got introduced early on in the company. He didn't do any of the lower positions. I hate to say it lower because I don't like to think of things so hierarchical. But the number one risk factor was that he just wasn't really liked. People had to listen to him because he was appointed that position, his organization, but it was rampant. The whole organization pretty much unanimously had a difficult time with the brother's leadership style. So that is a very sensitive topic because it's your brother and it was your
family members.
Yes. Right. So in that case, so I would say if you're gonna get some outside help, you've got to come to the table truly wanting to know. and being open to seeing that's what are the risks that other people perceive. So that's important. And one of the
Well,
other things,
that
yeah,
would negatively affect the value of the business, wouldn't it?
yes, because one of the biggest strengths that I had to keep redirecting people to when I had sold my businesses. And by the way, I had a business broker who told me, oh, he wouldn't even touch selling my business because I didn't own the real estate. And he said, he told me back then, most of the value of selling your business is because you own the building, you own the real estate, because everything else, your customers can decide to leave, your staff can decide to leave. So I had a staff of 30 people. And anytime I had a buyer, a prospective buyer who said, oh gosh, you don't own the real estate. Well, I should negotiate dropping the asking price. And the thing that, speaking to what you said earlier, intangible assets, right, is that,
Which make up 90% of the value of most companies today. You can see a graph on my
yeah,
pin.ca website. So 90% or more of your value is intangible in probably the last three businesses that you sold. Would that be correct?
oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, the one
and people
tangible,
couldn't and
I
people
guess the
couldn't
one
see it.
tangible asset was our leads list and our customer list. But the intangible strength that I found, the feedback I had received, the people, what appealed to buyers was a big piece was that my staff, my organization was, they run the business. They had a track record of running the business without me. And I was not a part of the day-to-day operations. So I was able to just check in once a week. So they weren't tied to, okay, well, I only work for this company because I love working for the owner. They weren't tied to that because they didn't work with me every day. I didn't come in every day. I didn't talk to them every day. So that is one of the pieces that is going to be important, because in this situation, if there is somebody they have to work with every day that they just do not enjoy at all, I mean, that's an organization that could collapse even if he didn't sell. It could collapse on him or her, even if they didn't sell. So that's important to be able to get a real hard assessment on where your business is at in all of those different quadrants of, of operating a business.
So when you're getting a business ready for sale, do you really look closely at the HR?
I do. First, it's not the first place I look. The first place I look is we have to assess, are they getting, how's their marketing? Is it bringing in, because you need to keep, the business needs to keep generating revenue. So as far marketing and sales, how's that system working? What's been the track record? And then of course, what are your existing customers? When I spoke earlier about your customer lifetime value, what is that number? Is the number 2 years? Is it 5 years? Is it 7 years? Is it longer? And so what's the makeup of current customers as opposed to new customers that contributes to the total revenue of the business? And so the first place I really look is the sales and marketing. Can they have confidence that when they step in, they don't have to wait for marketing to kick in, that it's already there? So that's the first place. The people would be the second place. And oftentimes, in my experience with the clients that I work with, oftentimes they're just too involved. The owner is doing too much.
Micromanaging.
Well, one of it could be micromanaging. And then the other piece could be that somehow it's like their intellectual property never transferred enough where they could basically clone themselves, where they're doing the mother share of business development, let's say, or they're doing the mother share of retaining. It's because their clients are primarily choosing their company to do business with their company because of that they like the personality They have the relationship with the founder. So that's often, like, for instance, I have a client he sells security and CCTV stuff, equipment, and he was doing 11 million, and I'd say 8 of that 11 million was him bringing in that
Oh,
business.
oh dear.
So, and
I
he knew that it was such a challenge, and this is a mindset.
couldn't let it go. Couldn't let it go.
Well, it's the challenge of letting it go, but it's also, I find, this negative limiting belief. Well, I call it negative because I don't think it's true. They think it's true. And it's this mindset of, I don't know how to teach them. People just can't do what I do because they don't know what I know. And it's faster for me to get this deal closed, or it's faster for me to do XYZ than for me to trust that somebody else is going to be able to do it. And they probably can't do it as well as that person. But that's the challenge of why are,
Systemization.
yes, the
That's what you
challenge of
specialize in, right?
systematizing. So that's where I can help them really reduce things to the ridiculous, because they don't think about, how do I do this? It's almost like, Eric, and I can appreciate where they're coming from, because it's almost like if somebody is a naturally gifted, I don't know, dancer, and they can go on the dance floor and they don't really know how to teach someone how to do that, because they haven't ever had to reduce it to, I don't know, how is it that these are just things that come naturally to them. It's their natural gifting. And so where I can help them is to, again, like I said, help them break things down and create a training program where we can take somebody step by step. Well, how did you get that knowledge? And where can we then get the stuff out of your head and dump it into a training, a recorded
Well,
training
I
process system?
think one of the things, yeah, that people don't understand is the value of experience. Now, in my industry, you've got all these accountants, and they take this special training, and then they're business valuators, but they've never been on the ground with owning and operating a business. So my methodology says, if you don't have 20 years of owning and operating a small business, you've got no business to think that you could tell somebody what the value of anything was. I mean, you could take a 10-hour YouTube training and you could figure out balance sheet. If you've been in business, you probably know all of that. But if you needed a brush up, you could do 10 hours on YouTube and you would know the accounting part of it. I mean, that's not rocket science. It's black and white. And what's tough is understanding when people are telling you the truth and when they're not. And if you've been in business for 20 years, you kind of have an idea of when you're being, we'll use a kind word, misled. And or being, they're bragging or boasting or misleading but you understand that if you've been in business, you can hear that. And this is where the accountants are completely blind. So, how do they deal with intangible assets? Well, they really can't because they don't have the right experience. And I think when you're passing on these intangible assets that, the processes, the procedures, the systems, and everything else, well, did you hire the right person in the first place that has the experience, the brain power, and the experience to be able to understand what you're trying to teach them? So if they can't learn, that's not their fault. That's your fault. You didn't hire the right person. You didn't train them right. And so this is where I think if you don't start out with the right people, you're at a real big disadvantage. Uh, if you have time for it, I have a really it's an interesting story. This guy worked in a service industry, and he worked for a guy that was just a complete jerk. And so he decided that he was going to quit and open his own service, doing the same thing, same city. And so he did that. And within a very short time, of course, because he really gave good service and he was kind of a nice guy, people all liked him and he was busy. And so he and his wife made a purposeful choice that they were going to hire some people and train some people. But number one prerequisite was you are going to be genuinely a nice person. You are going to be a kind, decent, nice person that can get along with anybody. And if you're not a nice person, we don't want you here. And they did that. They hired three of them. And then 10 years later, which was 6 months ago, I got a call from their accountant and said, hey, they need an evaluation. And it turned out these three nice, kind, decent people wanted to buy out their business. And so it was an amazing thing. The company was well, it was worth a lot of money. They were making a lot of money. Everybody was really well paid, and they refused to work for people who were nasty. They didn't want that vibe in their company. So you got the old 1, 2, 3. It's the first, the last, and the only time you'll get any service from these people if you're a jerk. And it was, so hire kind, decent people. And if you're not going to do that, it's like, how are you going to transfer the intellectual property if you don't have decent people or people who can do it? And I think kindness is kind and decent people goes a long way. And people don't think about that when they're doing the hiring. They're doing it, well, they're trying to stopgap. And that's not really a good idea. So I have a question. How long does it take for you, say somebody calls you and they want to sell their business? How long does it take to get
How long
them
does it
ready?
take to get them systematized? It's
Mhm.
varies so much because it really varies on their baseline. Where are they at now? So one
They
client,
haven't had the business valuation done, so you don't even know where they are
right,
at the road. Yeah, yeah,
right.
okay.
So it depends on where are they now, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. It also has to do with how fast do they implement? Do they take action on the
Mm.
um, the strategies that we put into place? But I will tell you, for example, one of the success stories who I felt this guy implemented pretty fast. He was so coachable, loved it. So he was wanting to retire. He had his company, I don't know, 30 years. So he was a medical device manufacturing company. And I think from the time we started, it was 2 years. It was two
Mhm,
years. And we did
mhm.
I mean, he was a fast implementer. He was new to all the marketing technology that I introduced him to be able to get his medical device products, you
What
know,
kind of
on his
dollars?
website.
What kind of dollars was he turning over a year?
He was doing 3 million, and
Okay.
yeah, so it was, just it was always kind of a small family business, for years. But he was very in tune of he was okay with getting out of his comfort zone because, like I said, when the stuff I asked him to change for marketing, and we worked together on doing, uh, and I also have people who can implement, for them to make it faster. But if they want to implement some of it themselves, they certainly can in house. He just got everything changed. He did his action plan assignments in between our coaching sessions, and then when we had to take a hard look at his team, his staff, he was really open minded. Whereas I had another client, he's in the construction business. Oh, he wanted to sell his business so he could go into consulting. And he had this one guy, he just couldn't let go of him. And early on, it was really clear and evident. I said, well, first of all, you're bleeding a lot of profits because he's draining whatever he's accomplishing isn't the role he was hired for. And it was also his personality, just his inability to take constructive criticism as well. But that was a detriment for him. It took him a long time. I don't even know if he ever really did. He told me he was going to let him go, but he really never did. So in that case, it took him a lot longer than it needed to, because I still believe that one person was a huge disadvantage. On the flip side, Eric, I also see situations where the owner is firing people, willy-nilly, and thinking, oh yeah, fire fast, hire slow. Yes, but there's certain situations where I just thought they lost really great talent. They did not need to be fired. They needed to be invested in. And investing could just look like,
Well,
you
I
might
think,
need a course like a Dale Carnegie course to help them, with develop certain skill sets. And that's like a 6-week thing, I mean, they could be invested in just by paying attention to them and asking things like, hey, doing one-on-ones regularly. And I noticed this, and that, and I want to check in with you, what's going on with you that I'm noticing a dip in performance. So, I see both situations where they should have fired people, or they fired people that, oh boy, they really
so their
lost.
HR was out of whack. And one of the things that a consultant that I did some work with, he was doing a great deal of consulting on human resources, and people were taking time off to look after children and elderly parents and siblings and that kind of thing. And companies weren't making adjustments for that. And so in this day and age, I mean, I forget what the number was, but it was a huge number of I think it was around 50% of employees are also looking after other people. And so here you are, you're looking after other people, and your boss isn't recognizing that or allowing you to do that. And so then the guy gets fired, and it was the best guy, really the best guy you had. You just didn't work with him. And so there's all of these things, but that's more your field of this kind of thing. And so uh, you're trying to get people so their business is turnkey. That's kind of your goal on all of this
Yes.
stuff.
And
You take
whether
it,
they're, oh, go ahead.
so you take it from where I do the business valuation. So now they know kind of where they are on that roadway, and you take a look at the 25 factors, and you see, oh, well, we can see some weakness here, and if they've got to sell now, it doesn't make any difference. Or too late. Okay.
Right.
But if they've got some time, if they're thinking, okay, I'm going to sell over the next couple of years, I had a guy, he says he's somewhere around 18 months out from selling. He spends $6 million a year on R&D. And he had this big accounting firm, international accounting firm, and they told him that his intangible assets were worth 1.5 million. He's put over 30 million into research and development, and he's got, I can't tell you particularly the industry but he's a dominant in his niche
Mhm.
field. And these people are trying to tell him he's not worth so much money. And my number was over 100 million. And they're trying to tell him that you spend $6 million a year on R&D, and you're telling me
Right.
you're not worth 100 million. No, get out of here. But you know what? he had trouble accepting from a small operator like me that these people really didn't understand his intangibles, and he needed to move on to looking at it like a venture capitalist, you know, like
Mhm.
this big accounting company. What would they have valued Skype at in 2009? Now, Skype in 2009, eBay owned it and they were selling it off. And the Canada Pension Plan picked up 15% of it for $300 million. And this guy by the name of Mark Wiseman, who was their lead guy in this acquisition, he thought 300 million was a good price, even though they were bleeding money. They
Mhm.
sold it to Microsoft 2 years later in 2011 for well over $1 billion, making, 3 times the money. Now, so what makes a venture capitalist like Mark Wiseman, or the way I look at things, what makes us different from this big accounting firm that, oh no, you're the company's making money and they're putting $6 million a year into R&D, and yet they're worth zippity doo dah. That doesn't make any sense, and that's why the methodology that we use, I think, is far superior to most of what's out there. Now, I'm not the smartest guy in the world. Mark Wiseman, guys like Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, they know this stuff in their sleep. That's why they make these deals, because they recognize intangible assets. They recognize value. And when people go by these numbers, they miss it all. And going by comps that aren't comps at all, they're just, data that people have put together to sell. That
Right.
doesn't mean it's accurate. And so those are just the things that we have to deal with, and try
Well, Eric,
and
just
make
out of
them work.
curiosity, what kind of businesses come to you to they ask you, to give a valuation for them?
Well, like this guy I quoted, with the business that I thought was worth well over 100 million, that kind of person. And then
What
to
industries? What I meant what industries?
oh, what industries?
Mhm.
Oh, could be anything from manufacturing for mm, uh, I would say manufacturing is one of the big ones. And then you get your service industries like, the spas and that sort of thing, trucking, um, any kind of service industry at all. Service and manufacturing, I think, are the two biggest ones.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Gotcha. And one of the questions you asked me earlier was, how long does it take for me to get them ready? So I have a similar question for you. How long does a valuation take?
Oh, anywhere from a week to 2 weeks, generally, start to finish.
Mhm.
And provided they have all the information that I need and there's no holdup on, getting the information flow.
Mhm.
Um,
And is there
so,
a set price if somebody is ready now to get a business valuation?
well, generally they run between 3,500 and 8,500. But yeah, in that range. And it depends on, how many employees they've got, their client base, or, what have I got to analyze here? How tough is this going to be to sort this information and get this information out of the client and onto the paper? So yeah, it kind of depends. Trying to think of over the last week, what have I quoted? 12.5, 8,000. Um, 3,500, 4,200. Those are kind of numbers that, are pretty common, just depending on what it is you're looking at.
So do they come back for another valuation? Like, let's say um, they're doing 5 million and then you give them a valuation and then maybe 3 years later they realize, oh, we're now at 10 million. So how many of your clients would you say ever come back to do another valuation after they've worked on their
More
business?
than you might think, and more often than you might think. I had a guy in our capital city, and he got a valuation from me 2 years ago, and now that deal blew up on him, and he is now dealing with somebody else. And I redid the valuation here just a few weeks ago, and I got to tell him, well, you know what? I don't think this guy is your buyer. I think your buyer is from Europe, because they can't afford to turn the lights on in Europe. Okay. And
Yeah.
so he said, oh, he said, you know what? I'm going down to the embassy of my home country this afternoon. There's 28 people down, 28 business delegations. I don't know, or business guys and their people. And they all want to buy businesses in Canada because they want to get out of Poland like now. And so there's every country has a bunch of people with money. And a lot of them over in Europe won't get out of Dodge right now. So it's a good place for people to be looking. If you've got a systemized
Mhm.
business that somebody's organized for you and got you prepared, and you've got your price, what it's worth, then yeah, that's a good place to look, because yeah, people are looking to get out of Dodge. And Canada is certainly a place. I mean, what do we got? We've got oil, we've got gas, we've got potash, we've got uranium, we've got water power, we've got lumber, we've got rare earth minerals, and coal. We've got probably the best educated on average workforce in the world. I've read that in several places. Um, we went out and we brought immigrants into Canada. They cheated. They looked at their score on IQ and said, yep, you and your family be welcome in Canada. And so we've got all these immigrants that came into Canada, and they're all smarter than all of the old,
Mhm.
they're
Yeah.
just, we've got some really intelligent people here, and it's really, really helped. I mean, you can imagine
Well, if I can just
how.
actually interject, Eric, and I'm curious to kind of bring the conversation back to the valuations. One of the questions I know that our audience is probably going to have is, when you give them a valuation, does it come with any kind of list of recommendations? What do they need? What could they do to boost and increase their valuation?
No, the reason that we don't do that is we don't want to be uh, uh, we don't want to have any ties, really. Okay, like, here's your valuation. This is what it's worth. You need to perhaps go to some different people. You need to talk to those kind of people that can give you this. But we want to be uh, we don't want to be accused of uh, trying to turn them this way or that way or the next way. Uh,
Gotcha. Gotcha.
trying
So
to say,
you just give them a straight valuation. This is what it's worth.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And then of
yeah.
course, it's logical. I'm sure all of our viewers can understand and agree. If you want to boost your valuation, then you need to boost, your annual sales,
Oh, yeah. We
boosting
we will
the
say
value.
you need to talk to people. You need to do this. You need to do that. You need to do but we're not going to recommend. We want to stay out of the conflict of interest. I guess is the word I was looking
Right.
for before, and so we just because you see, to be legal with a business valuation in Canada and most other places, it's got to be, without any conflicts, that it's non-bias.
Right.
You're not trying to push them one way or push them another way or whatever. And but generally, yeah, you can. You give them the goods and you give them the information, and yeah, they go from there.
Sounds good. So if people want to reach out to you and they want to learn more and have a conversation for the next step, what's the best way they can reach out to you, Eric?
Well, I've got a real easy website to remember. It's P is in Peter, I is in India, N is in Nancy.ca because I'm in Canada. And if you can't remember pin.ca, well, I think
Sounds
you
good. So
can.
your email's on there. Great.
Yeah,
Your email, your contact information.
yeah.
That's great. So yeah, so for our viewers, if you have been thinking about getting your business ready to sell, thinking about exit planning, perhaps you want to retire in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, or maybe you just want to move on to other things and start other businesses like my path. Whatever the case. And you know what, even if you're not ready to sell, scaling your business is the same process that as it is to sell, at least getting your business ready to sell. So you want to scale it, you want to have it systematized, you want to have the business run with a whole lot less of you, hopefully to run without you. And that would be the ideal situation. So if you've got any of these needs, definitely reach out to Eric or myself. And I'd also love to know what your questions are. So anything that we hadn't covered in this conversation on the topic of what do you need to do to get your business ready to sell? We talked about, well, what do you need to do? You need to increase sales. You need to increase the annual revenue. Second thing is you need to increase your customer retention. After that, you want to increase your customer lifetime value. And what else do you need to do to get your business ready to sell? Well, take a look at your organization, your team. Can they operate the business with a different owner, so the owner doesn't feel like, ooh, what happens? What happens if they all quit? What am I going to do then? So take a look at that organization and seeing the strength of their skills, and that it's the business isn't totally tied to who you are as a person, not a personal brand, but a business brand. So I hope our viewers were able to get some nuggets and even if you left with one nugget from today's conversation, I hope that has helped to percolate some new thoughts, some new action plans. And again, if there's some questions we didn't hit, I just want to invite everybody to write those questions down in the comments below. Also love to know what you did take away. So please share that in the comments below. And if there's another specific topic you want us to share in the next roundtable discussion, then please also add that to the comments below. So it's really been a delight having this discussion with you, Eric. Again, I was speaking with Eric Jordan today from pin.ca. And I am Yun Cannon from Paramount Business Coach. And thank you so much for spending the time with us today. All right, we'll see you next time. Bye for now.